What up, G-Life? It's your boy, MC Shadow, back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. That is how you help my channel get into the algorithm. I'd highly appreciate you. Go ahead and do that. Now, don't forget to check out my second channel, Man in Society, M.O.D. We talk about stuff outside of the streets. What I wanted to get into was something that a really good subscriber of mine asked, right? But before I get into that, right, I was chilling, with my team, right? And, homie was showing me some beats, right, that he was, had made, right, to see if I like them, right? And, while he was doing that, I was going through my emails and, I was letting them know, like, homies right here want me to talk about this, and this. What do you guys think, about the, the idea of the video, whatever. And then I brought up this video, right? And, homie was the one that makes the beats, right? He certified, he certifies a white boy, right? He don't bang, he's not, he's just the guy that makes beats and puts my videos together, right? He's a good camarada. But he's not gang related, right? He's like, hey, a certain channel out there, right? I'm not gonna get into that, right? He's like, oh, he made a video talking about, something similar to that, right? And he was saying this and that, right? And I was like, oh, okay, maybe, like, now I don't know if that's why homie asked if I could do this video, right? But I always keep it 100 with people, you know what I mean? I always come, straight up, But if sometimes the videos that you guys ask of me, if they're regarding maybe like another YouTuber or like something they said, it would be cool if you guys let me know, oh, it's because this YouTuber said this and that. That way I'm just aware, right? That way, people just don't come and be like, oh, this was hating on this or this, and just I don't have to deal with the madness, I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing to me. I'll put up with it, it is what it is. But I'm just saying, that way I'm just, aware, right? Because I don't like to feel like people thinking that I'm stirring up stuff when I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what are people talking about? Like, they tripping, because this is not the first time something like this has happened, right? It's because, like I said, I really don't watch, some of these channels and the shit, right? So, I completely get caught, blindsided, right? Like, when people be like, oh, he's hating on this and that. And I'm just like, the hell? Like, I'm over here thinking these people are making up shit, right? So, it'd be cool if you guys, give me a heads up, you know what I mean? But anywho, right, not, my boy, I'm not accusing you that that's the reason why you asked your question, I'm just saying that homie just told me, it's like, there's a channel that made some stuff, so, I'm just saying just in case, right? But anywho, so, who influenced barrios, right? Like chicano gangs, right? Like, the landscape of Chicano barrios, right? Was it the Italians, the Italian mafia and stuff like that, right? Were they the influence of the structures and stuff like that, right? First of all, gangs and mobs are two different things. You know what I mean? Let's get that off the bat. Straight up, bro. They're not the same thing. Although similar rules, similar structures, two whole different things, bro. You know what I mean? When we're talking about mobs, like the Russian mob or the Italian mob or the, Chinese mob or the, other mobs that are out there, those are different from gangs, bro. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing. I know people like to intermingle the two things together, but they are in a whole other levels. You get what I'm saying? So they're not the same thing, right? So, but they, like I say, they have similar things in common and they do correlate together, right? But they're two different things. But did they influence? Since I started my channel, have had, the privilege of knowing a lot of homies, getting to meet a lot of homies, a lot of old G's, a lot of veteranos, a lot of solid gente, right? Who have hit me up through emails and have gotten the pleasure to sit down with them and, them tell me their stories and yada, 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 right? People always say like, hey, why are you throwing names out there? When I say shout out to woo. Bro, the reason I do that is because these individuals say, hey, make sure you shout me out, my boy. Like, orale, hey, shout my barrio out too. All right, Simon, don't even trip, my boy. You know what I mean? I got to give, credit where credit's due and pay homage. That's why I do it, not to, like, glorify the life or not to, like, burn these fools. You know what I mean? Like, hey, sabes que they provided the info and everything like that. And make sure, I have to, hey, make sure you give me credit. All right, don't trip. I got you, my boy. I'm not going to be selfish and say, like, I know all this info and try to take it for myself. But see, la gente no sabe, nomás le gusta hablar, like, oh, this was burning. People like when the homies are like, hey, make sure you show me. It's crazy, huh? Anyway. So I had gotten the pleasure to meet a lot of people, right? And one of the oldest homeboys that I have met, right, is a homie who started a neighborhood, right? I actually met him, his grandson, who's from his neighborhood, hit me up, right? And that's how I got in the pleasure to meet him, right? 91 years old, right? He started his neighborhood, right? And he told, the story. And, I came and, we sat down, drank some chelas, carne asada, and he got to tell me his tale, right? How everything started and stuff like that, right? And why. But out of respect for the homie, I'm not gonna throw the name out there, right? Because before I made this video, I made sure I hit up the homie if it was cool, and he was like, yeah, talk about it, just don't throw the name. Some homies, say, some homies, prefer not to. That's why I say some and I don't say others, right? I always run it through the homies before I do it, right? I don't want to step on no toes. So homie was like, yeah, go ahead, all right. So when he said that he started his barrio, right? It's a barrio that's located, I guess you could consider the east side of Los Angeles, right? This was a while back ago, right? And people have to keep this in mind of the landscape of things, right? Things were different back then than they are now, right? So information wasn't as easy like us, right? Like we're able to, turn on the TV or newspapers or phones or whatever. Back then, there was none of that, bro. And this is the age where newspapers were barely, becoming, hitting, right? And televisions were at its, basic form, right? And not only that, but you had to have money to have a TV. So people didn't have TV, right? You couldn't just there was TVs, but limited TVs, right? We're talking about this was in 1915, right? To the 1800s, right? When some of these even older than Homeboy, right? Him growing up, he remembers seeing older vatos already out there, right? So the homie 91, he was seeing older homies out there already, and them, telling them what's up, right? And then he, grabbed that information and started his own neighborhood. Anywho, but he was influenced by other Chicano gang members, right? And now who influenced like the whole thing? It wasn't about like I said, this news wasn't relevant to the media, to the public, to the gente, right? And if anybody did have that knowledge, whatever, it's because they were able to afford to get the things in order to have that kind of knowledge, right? So these people weren't aware of none of that kind of stuff. So how were they influenced by other mob groups, right? They weren't. But I'll tell you. He said he would get his ideas, right? That when they were going to school, right? And they would sit down and they would talk about like history, and they would talk about, different, armies, battling, and, que piratas and que pinche Romans and all of that, right? Just hearing all these tales, right? And he said that there was some like cartoon from like old school that they would give in some candies that it was like kind of like a comic thing, like an early version of a comic thing, right? But it wasn't a comic book like a superhero or nothing like that. It was like came with the candy that they would eat. I forgot the shit that homie had told me, whatever. They would get in, they would collect them, right? And just with little stuff like that, they would get like little ideas, that would hit their head. Remember, these are kids, bro. These are kids when they first started barrios, because homie said when, they were, starting their neighborhood and stuff like that, like, riding bikes and playing, baseball and stuff like that. That, they would mess around, like kind of like playing around like kids do, right? They use the imagination and stuff like that, right? And, just by seeing, the division with people and all that gave them the idea of, how to start, the program, like what influenced them, right? Like, oh, well, if these people were able to do it and they went and did it, then why can't we, right? And they did it, because these vatos were trying to fuck with them, like the Indians and, Americans, like homie said, Native Americans, obviously he was talking about, right? And, and stuff like that, right? And like, oh, like these people are messing with us and trying to, take advantage of us. So, we should do the same like these vatos, And that's how, that was the influence. But it wasn't like, he said that, yeah, when he would talk to like other, cholos already that were in the area, right, from other older gangs, that, también así les decían, and this fool was like, yeah, that's true. Like, it was making sense to this morrillo, he was at morrillo at the time, like, yeah, that's true, hey, and that's like, pretty much that's what was influencing, right? Now, maybe now when things started forming like more politically and when it started getting more structured and stuff like that, maybe other roles came into the picture and stuff like that, but as in like the foundation and who influenced these individuals, stuff like that, like, no. And here's the thing though, because you can't say that other gangsters influence other gangsters, because even if we say that this individual was influenced by other gangsters, right? You have to keep asking the questions. Then who influenced those gangsters? And if the Italian mob, because they say that gangsters influence other gangsters, okay. If let's say the Italian mobs were the first gangsters that influenced the rest of the gangsters, right? Who influenced the Italian mob then? If gangsters are influencing other gangsters, then who influenced the first gangsters? It's kind of like people say, gangster rap is what influenced gang banging and gangster rap and gangster rap. But weren't people gangbanging before gangster rap existed? So what influenced that then? You have to keep asking the questions. You can't just stop whenever you feel like this is what the problem is, and now you're going to stop right there and try to say that that's your answer. No. Keep asking the questions. Then who influenced the first gangsters? If, the very first gangs. If people are saying that gangs are the problem and gangsters are the influence, who influenced the first gangs? Because you can remove the gangsters out the picture, but won't it be plausible that the thing that influenced the first gangsters out there would do the same thing and influence the next batch of gangsters? Because you guys are saying that this is the problem, you remove them out of the equation. You didn't really get to the source of the problem, because what influenced those gangsters? You can't just stop whenever you feel like that's what satisfied what you were looking at to be the answer. Movies don't influence. Music doesn't influence. Something else influences. What is it? You know what I mean? Because gangster rap wasn't always around, and gangsters haven't always been around, and so what influenced those first batch of gangsters? The problem to begin with. You gotta start. You have to keep asking the questions and can't just stop because you feel like, yeah, I like this as the answer. I want this to be the answer, so I'm gonna. Right here's where my search is gonna stop. And then, nah. Like I said, these fools weren't being influenced by no Italian mobs and no nothing like that, bro. They grab little bits and pieces out of the destruction and the mayhem of humanity, right? Because they're looking at humanity, right? And they're being taught history and all the events that happen and all the chaos and madness, right? That they see even on a day-to-day, okay? All the battles and wars that have been throughout man, right? Because people want to take over other people's lands and mistreat their, cultures and races and ethnicities and all that, right? And now these individuals are growing up in an area where other people are trying to take advantage of them and their ethnicities, and they can relate to these other, they can relate to these other events that are happening out there, right? And if these people stood up to these people, then why can't we stand up for these people and stand up for our rights and stuff like that? And then what happens? Just like any other empire out there, right, that was looking to fight for their people and culture, and then they established and they grew bigger and bigger, and then they started mistreating their people, right? Because power always corrupts, right? Money, greed, power always corrupts. No different here, right? It started for a good cause, and it ended up mutating into a disaster. But overall, that's just my breakdown, of what, like I said, at least from, some of the, main individuals, right? And what were their influences on why they started neighborhoods. Same, Shadow, we out.